I stood in the shadow of a glittering chandelier, watching my mother-in-law parade her wealth, oblivious to the truth I held in my hands. One email could shatter her world, and I was ready to send it. I'm Juniper Vale, 28 years old, a woman who's learned that humility can be a weapon sharper than pride. My story isn't about revenge, though it tastes sweet. It's about standing tall when someone tries to cut you down. 5 years ago, I met Liam, my husband, a tech genius with a heart bigger than his bank account. He built a startup from nothing, coding late nights in a cramped apartment. I loved him for his dreams, not his dollars. But his mother, Evelyn, saw me as a threat, a nobody leeching off her son's success. She didn't know I'd walked away from my own career to care for my dying mother, a woman who taught me that kindness outlives wealth. I never told Evelyn about the estate my family owns, the historic Willow Grove where she planned her lavish gala. Why would I? I don't wear my worth on my sleeve. Evelyn's first words to me were a blade. She scanned my simple dress and said, "Liam deserves better than ordinary." Her smile dripped with disdain, and I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to scream that I'd given up everything for love, for family, but I swallowed the words. Liam stood by me, his voice steady, promising to shield me from her venom. But Evelyn's shadow loomed large, her demands draining our savings, her whispers poisoning our peace. She thought she could bury me under her wealth, her status, her lies. Then came the gala, her chance to flaunt her world and exclude me from it. She didn't know I held the keys to her downfall, not out of malice, but because truth has a way of rising. What happens when the woman who called you worthless faces the consequences of her pride? Stick with me, and I'll show you how I turned her game against her, not with anger, but with the quiet strength of knowing who I am. This story will hit you where it hurts, where you felt unseen or undervalued. It's for anyone who's been judged by someone who never bothered to know them. Keep watching, because this isn't just my victory. It's a lesson in standing up for your worth. Evelyn's words lingered like smoke, curling around my thoughts long after that first meeting. Her sneer, calling me ordinary, burned deeper than I'd admit. I stood in our modest kitchen, chopping carrots for dinner, the knife's rhythm steadying my heart. I'd given up my career as a graphic designer to care for my mother in her final months, a choice I never regretted. Her voice, soft and wise, echoed in my mind. Juniper, your worth isn't in what you own, but in what you give. Evelyn saw none of that. To her, I was a shadow in Liam's bright world, a woman who didn't belong. She'd visit our small Seattle apartment, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood, her eyes scanning for flaws. One evening, she handed me a velvet box with a smirk. "A little gift," she said, "something fitting for you." Inside was a cheap, tarnished necklace, the kind you'd find in a discount bin. I forced a smile, but her laugh told me the truth. It was a deliberate jab, a reminder of my place. My fingers tightened around the box, the metal edges biting into my palm. I wanted to hurl it back, to tell her about the nights I'd stayed up designing logos to pay for Mom's medicine. But I didn't. Liam noticed my silence that night. He pulled me close, his hands warm against my shoulders. He promised Evelyn's cruelty wouldn't last, that he'd talk to her. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Evelyn's wealth came from Liam's startup, a company he'd built from sleepless nights and sheer will. She treated his success as her own, demanding thousands each month for her lavish lifestyle, designer bags, wine tastings, trips to Napa. I saw the strain in Liam's eyes, the way he checked our bank account before paying bills. I never asked him to stop supporting her. She was his mother, his only family. But her demands grew, and so did her disdain. At a neighborhood barbecue, I overheard her whispering to her friends, calling me a leech who trapped her son. My cheeks burned, but I kept serving lemonade, smiling through the sting. I thought of my friend Clara, who'd faced her own mother-in-law's scorn. She told me how she'd spent years trying to prove her worth, only to realize some people build walls no kindness can breach. Clara's story grounded me, reminded me I wasn't alone. But it didn't dull the ache of Evelyn's words spreading like wildfire, tarnishing my name in our tight-knit community. Then came the first crack in her facade. One evening, my phone buzzed with a group chat notification. Evelyn had accidentally sent a message meant for her friends. "Juniper's too plain for Liam's world. She'll drag him down." My heart stopped. The chat included Liam's closest colleagues, people who respected me. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow, the words blurring through tears. I could have shown Liam right then, let his anger burn her bridges, but I didn't. I deleted the message from my phone, my hands trembling. I wasn't ready to break his heart, not yet. Instead, I poured my pain into volunteering at the local food bank, where I served meals to people who never judged me. Their gratitude was a balm, a reminder of who I was. But Evelyn's mistake lit a spark in me. Her carelessness showed she underestimated me, and that was her first misstep. I wasn't just Liam's wife, the quiet woman she mocked. I held secrets she couldn't imagine, and soon she'd learn how sharp humility could cut. The rain tapped against our apartment window, a steady drumbeat matching the ache in my chest. Evelyn's group chat message haunted me, but I kept it buried, a secret heavier than I expected. Liam and I married in a quiet courthouse ceremony, our vows whispered under flickering fluorescent lights. We couldn't afford a big wedding. Liam's startup was thriving, but Evelyn's demands siphoned our savings. Every month, thousands went to her. $10,000 for a new wardrobe, $5,000 for a charity gala she hosted to boost her status. I never complained. I knew what family meant to him, the only son of a single mother. But Evelyn's cruelty grew bolder. At a community fundraiser I organized for the food bank, she cornered me near the dessert table. Her perfume stung my nose as she leaned in, whispering, "You're out of your depth, Juniper. Liam needs someone with ambition, not a charity case." My hands trembled, clutching a tray of cupcakes. I wanted to tell her I designed the fundraiser's posters, rallied volunteers, raised thousands. Instead, I smiled and offered her a cupcake, my throat tight. Her rumors spread like ivy, creeping into our social circle. Neighbors stopped inviting me to book club. Friends grew distant. I overheard a woman at the grocery store murmur, "That's the girl who married for money." My heart sank, but I kept my head high, bagging my groceries with deliberate care. I thought of my late mother, who'd face whispers about her illness, people assuming she was weak. She taught me to let actions speak louder than gossip. But Evelyn's words cut deeper each day. Liam noticed my quieter moments. He'd pull me into his arms, promising to talk to Evelyn. But I saw the guilt in his eyes. He felt torn, caught between his mother's needs and our dreams. I didn't want to add to his burden, so I stayed silent about the group chat, about the whispers. But silence has a cost. My volunteer work at the food bank became my refuge, where I served meals to people who saw me, not Evelyn's lies. I remembered a story from my friend Clara, who'd shared how her mother-in-law's gossip nearly broke her marriage. Clara said she found strength in small acts, writing in a journal, helping others, to reclaim her sense of self. Her words stuck with me as I poured coffee for a homeless man at the food bank, his grateful nod warming me more than Evelyn's approval ever could. Then a shift came, sharp and unexpected. Evelyn called Liam, her voice sugary over the phone. She wanted to host a gala at Willow Grove, the historic estate, and insisted I come. A chance to start fresh, she said. Liam's eyes lit up with hope, but my stomach twisted. I'd seen her games before. The necklace, the group chat. Yet, for Liam, I agreed, picturing Mom's advice, give people a chance, but guard your heart. I didn't know then that Evelyn's invitation was a trap, a stage for her to shine while pushing me further into the shadows. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with an email from her, the subject line glaring, Gala details. My finger hovered over it, dread pooling in my chest. I wasn't ready for what she'd planned, but something told me this was no olive branch. It was a blade, polished and waiting. Evelyn's email sat unopened on my phone, a ticking bomb I wasn't ready to touch. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I sat on our worn couch, the fabric frayed from years of love and late-night talks with Liam. Evelyn's call about the gala lingered, her voice dripping with sweetness that felt wrong, like sugar masking poison. I wanted to believe she meant to reconcile, for Liam's sake. He looked so hopeful, his eyes bright with the dream of family harmony. I couldn't bear to dim that light, so I nodded, promising to attend. But doubt clawed at me. I remembered the necklace, the group chat, her whispered insults at the fundraiser. Each was a calculated move to shrink me, to make me feel small. I thought of my mother, who'd faced her own betrayals, a friend who'd turned on her during her illness, spreading lies about her strength. Mom had said, "People show their hearts in time, Juniper. Trust your instincts." I wanted to trust Evelyn, but my instincts screamed caution. The next morning, I opened her email. My heart sank as I read her words. The gala at Willow Grove is for Seattle's elite. I've curated a guest list of sophistication, people who belong. You can come, but don't expect to fit in. Her tone was sharp, cloaked in false kindness. She listed dress codes, etiquette rules, as if I were a child who'd embarrass her. My hands shook, anger mixing with hurt. I'd organized fundraisers, designed campaigns, but to her, I was nothing. I didn't tell Liam. He was buried in code, his startup facing a crucial deadline. Instead, I walked to the food bank where I served soup to a woman named Ellen. She shared her story. Her sister-in-law had once invited her to a family event, only to mock her in front of everyone. Ellen's eyes welled as she spoke, and I felt a kinship, a shared wound. Her story grounded me, reminded me that pain like this wasn't mine alone. I replied to Evelyn, keeping my words polite, "I'll be there. Thank you for the invitation." But as I hit send, my resolve hardened. I'd go, not to please her, but to face her on her own turf. Willow Grove was no ordinary venue. It was my family's estate, a secret I'd kept to avoid her judgment. My father had built it into a legacy, and I held a stake in its success. Evelyn didn't know, and I wasn't ready to tell her. Then came the twist, sharp as a blade. My phone buzzed with a notification, a public post from Evelyn on social media. A photo of her in a glittering gown, captioned, "Ready for the Gala of the Year. Only the best for Willow Grove." Tucked in the comments was a jab. Some people just don't belong at events like this. My name wasn't mentioned, but the sting was unmistakable. Friends messaged me, asking if I'd seen it. My cheeks burned, but I didn't respond. Evelyn thought she'd set the stage to humiliate me. She didn't know I had grown up walking Willow Grove's halls, that its staff called me by name. Her gala was her spotlight, but I was about to step into it, carrying a truth she couldn't imagine. Evelyn's social media post glowed on my phone, her words a public dagger aimed at my heart. I stood frozen in our dim living room, the hum of Seattle's evening traffic outside barely registering. Her comment, "Some people just don't belong," cut deeper than I expected. Friends had seen it, their messages piling up. "Juniper, is she talking about you?" I wanted to scream, to expose her cruelty. But I pictured Liam's face, his hope for his mother's change. I couldn't shatter that. Not yet. Instead, I set my phone down, my hands trembling, and sank into the couch, the weight of her words pressing against my chest. I thought of my mother, who'd faced public judgment during her illness. Neighbors had whispered she was faking to avoid work, their cruelty born of ignorance. She taught me to hold my head high, to let truth outlast lies. But Evelyn's post wasn't just a whisper. It was a spotlight meant to shame me before our community. I volunteered at the food bank the next day, ladling stew for a man who thanked me with a tired smile. His gratitude anchored me, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to Evelyn's games. Then her email arrived, a final blow. "Juniper, on second thought, the Gala's guest list is full. It's an exclusive affair. Class matters. Stay home." The words stung like a slap, her tone dripping with superiority. She'd invited me only to retract it, to ensure I felt small. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing, anger mixing with a raw, aching hurt. I imagined my mother's voice. "Don't let her define you." But the pain was real, sharp, like a wound reopened. I didn't tell Liam. He was crunching numbers for his startup, his brow furrowed with stress. Instead, I confided in my friend Clara over coffee. She shared a story of her own, a sister-in-law who'd excluded her from a family wedding, posting photos online to rub it in. Clara's voice cracked as she spoke, and I felt our shared pain, the sting of being cast out. Her story gave me strength, a reminder that I wasn't alone in navigating betrayal. I replied to Evelyn, my words measured. "I understand. Enjoy your gala." But inside, I was burning. I walked to Willow Grove that evening, the estate's grand arches glowing under moonlight. My father had poured his life into this place, and I'd invested my inheritance to keep it thriving. Evelyn had no idea it was mine, that I knew every corner of its halls. Her gala was her stage, but I held the strings. Then came the twist, a call that shifted everything. My father's voice crackled through the phone. "Juniper, Evelyn's party racked up a $5,000 bill. She's demanding a discount, saying she's connected. Her guests trashed the ballroom, insulted the staff." My heart raced, a spark of opportunity igniting. Evelyn thought she'd humiliated me, but she'd overplayed her hand. The staff, people I'd known since childhood, had told my father everything. Her arrogance, her entitlement. I stood in Willow Grove's garden, the scent of roses heavy in the air. Evelyn's gala was crumbling, and I wasn't just a guest she'd excluded. I was the daughter of the man she'd insulted, the keeper of a legacy she couldn't touch. Her reckoning was coming, and I was ready to watch it unfold. My father's voice lingered in my ears, his words about Evelyn's $5,000 bill a spark in the dry tinder of my anger. I stood in Willow Grove's garden, the roses scent sharp, their thorns catching the moonlight like tiny warnings. Evelyn had crossed a line, not just with me, but with the staff, people who'd served my family for decades, who'd poured coffee at my mother's memorial. She'd mocked them, called them servants, while her guests spilled wine and sneered at their efforts. My father's tone was calm,
but edged with fury, recounting how Evelyn demanded a discount, claiming she knew the owner. The irony twisted in my gut. She had no idea the owner was my father, that I held a stake in this place she'd defiled. I paced the garden path, gravel crunching under my boots. My mother's lessons echoed. Humility isn't weakness, Juniper. It's a blade, honed by patience. I'd been patient, swallowing Evelyn's insults, her necklace, her group chat, her gala exclusion. But this was different. She'd humiliated me, yes, but she'd also hurt people I loved, people who didn't deserve her scorn. My anger wasn't just for me anymore, it was for them.
I thought of Clara's story, her sister-in-law who'd thrown a lavish party to impress, only to leave unpaid bills and broken promises. Clara had said she thought money bought respect, but all it bought was shame. That memory grounded me, a reminder that Evelyn's arrogance wasn't unique, but part of a pattern. People who build towers of pride only to watch them crumble. I felt a kinship with Clara, with the staff, with anyone who'd been dismissed by someone who thought wealth equaled worth. I stopped pacing, my breath steadying. An idea bloomed, sharp and clear. "Dad," I said into the phone, "don't give her a discount. Make her and her guests work off the bill, serving tables, cleaning the ballroom. They disrespected your staff. Let them learn what service means." My voice was firm, but inside my heart raced. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, a lesson my mother would have approved. My father chuckled, a rare sound since Mom's passing. "I like it, Juniper. I'll handle it." He paused, then added, "She mentioned you, you know. Said you'd understand her situation since you're family. I told her you're my daughter, not hers." His words warmed me, a reminder of the legacy I carried, one Evelyn could never touch. I hung up, the night air cool against my skin. I pictured Evelyn in her glittering gown, her confidence cracking as she faced the consequences. But doubt crept in. Would Liam understand? I hadn't told him about the gala exclusion, the social media jab. I wanted to protect his hope, but this felt bigger, a line I couldn't uncross. I pushed the thought aside. Evelyn had built this trap herself. The next evening, my father sent photos. Evelyn, her hair pinned tightly, stood in a server's apron, balancing trays of champagne flutes. Her friends, in their designer dresses, mopped the ballroom floor, their faces flushed with embarrassment. The staff watched, their dignity restored, some hiding smiles. I stared at the images, expecting satisfaction, but a pang of sadness hit me. Not for Evelyn, but for the woman she could have been, the one Liam remembered from his childhood. Then came the twist, a jolt I hadn't seen coming. My father called again, his voice low. "Juniper, Evelyn tried to charm me, said she's connected, that she'd pay later if I let her off. When I refused, she mentioned Liam's startup, hinted she could ruin his reputation if I pushed her." My blood ran cold. Evelyn wasn't just reckless. She was dangerous, willing to threaten her own son to save face. I gripped the phone, my resolve hardening. She'd underestimated me, but more importantly, she'd underestimated Liam's strength. I thought of the food bank where I'd served a man named Tom last week. He'd shared how his brother had tried to sabotage his small business over a family feud, spreading lies to clients. Tom had rebuilt, not by fighting back, but by proving his worth through hard work. His story mirrored mine now. Evelyn's threat was her last card, played out of desperation. But I wasn't Tom, and this wasn't just about me. It was about protecting Liam, our future, the staff who'd been belittled. I walked back to Willow Grove that night, the estate's lights glowing like beacons. The ballroom was quiet now, the gala's chaos gone. I found Maria, a server who'd known me since I was a child. She hugged me, her eyes bright. "Your dad told us what you did, Juniper. "We're proud of you." Her words hit me hard, a validation I hadn't known I needed. I'd spent years hiding my family's wealth, wanting to be seen for myself, not my inheritance. But tonight, I felt the power of both, my mother's humility and my father's legacy. Evelyn's gala had been her stage, but I had rewritten the script. She thought she could bury me in her world of wealth and status, but I'd turned her spotlight into a mirror, reflecting her flaws for all to see. I didn't feel triumph, not fully. There was a weight to this, a cost to standing up. But as I left Willow Grove, the roses' scent following me, I knew I'd made the right choice. Evelyn's threat against Liam changed everything. She wasn't just a cruel mother-in-law. She was a force that could hurt the man I loved. I had to tell him, not to break his heart, but to protect our future. The photos, the bill, her words, they were evidence, a truth I couldn't hide anymore. As I walked home, Seattle's skyline glittering in the distance, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't just Juniper, the quiet wife who endured. I was Juniper Vale, daughter of a legacy, guardian of my own worth, and I was ready to face what came next. The Seattle skyline glowed faintly through our apartment window, but my eyes were fixed on the photos from Willow Grove. Evelyn in an apron, her face tight with shame, was a stark contrast to the woman who'd mocked me. I sat on the edge of our bed, the weight of her threat against Liam's startup pressing on me. I'd kept her cruelties hidden, her necklace, her group chat, her gala exclusion, to spare Liam's heart. But her hint at sabotage was a line I couldn't ignore. My mother's voice whispered in my mind, "Truth isn't a weapon, Juniper. It's a shield." I clutched my phone, the evidence of Evelyn's actions heavy in my hands. Liam came home late, his shoulders slumped from a long day coding. I handed him the phone, showing him the photos, the $5,000 bill, and Evelyn's email excluding me from the gala. His eyes darkened as he scrolled, landing on her social media jab. I told him about her threat to ruin his reputation, my voice steady but soft. His jaw tightened, a storm brewing in his silence. I expected anger, but his hurt cut deeper. "She lied to me," he whispered. "She said you refused to come." I nodded, my throat tight. I thought of my friend Clara, who'd faced a similar moment when her husband learned of her sister-in-law's betrayal. Clara said it was like watching a dam break, painful but necessary. Liam's pain mirrored that now, his trust in his mother crumbling. He called Evelyn, his voice low but sharp. "Why, Mom? Why lie about Juniper? Why threaten my work?" Her excuses crackled through the speaker, claims it was a misunderstanding, that she was desperate. He cut her off. "You spent my money to impress people who don't care about you. You insulted my wife, our staff. I'm done." He hung up, his hands shaking, and blocked her number. I reached for him, expecting resistance, but he pulled me close. "I'm sorry, Juniper. I should have seen it sooner." His apology was a balm, but the weight of his choice to cut off his only family settled heavily. I'd wanted justice, but seeing Liam's pain made it bittersweet. I thought of the food bank, where I'd met a woman named Ruth who'd lost her son to a family feud over money. She'd said, "Sometimes love means letting go." Her story echoed now, grounding me in the cost of truth. Then came the twist, a final unraveling. My father texted me. Evelyn had returned to Willow Grove, begging for forgiveness, claiming she'd been stressed. She'd spun a tale of financial ruin, blaming Liam's abandonment. But my father had checked her accounts. She'd hidden savings, enough to cover the bill, but not her pride. She had chosen to play the victim, hoping to guilt Liam back. I showed him the message, and his face hardened. "She's not changing," he said. "She never will." That night, we sat in silence, the city's hum outside our only sound. Liam's hand found mine, his grip firm. Evelyn's world, her rented penthouse, her designer clothes, was collapsing. She'd moved to a small apartment, her lifestyle stripped bare. I felt no joy, only clarity. I'd stood up not just for myself, but for the staff, for Liam, for the values my mother taught me. The truth had broken free, and with it, we were free too. The morning sun spilled through our window, painting our apartment in gold. I sat with Liam, our hands clasped, planning for our baby due in spring. Evelyn's world had shrunk. Her small apartment, her silenced phone, her faded status, they were her choice's harvest. A letter arrived last week, her handwriting shaky. She apologized, claiming regret, but hinted I'd overreacted. I read it once, then set it aside. My mother's words rang clear. Forgive, but protect your peace. I chose peace. I thought of Ruth from the food bank, who'd rebuilt her life after family betrayal. She'd said, "You don't need everyone's approval to thrive." Her wisdom was my anchor now. I wasn't the ordinary girl Evelyn scorned. I was Juniper Vale, keeper of my mother's lessons, partner to a man who chose me, daughter of a legacy that stood firm. The twist came softly, unexpectedly. A staff member from Willow Grove sent me a photo, Evelyn volunteering at a local shelter, her face humbled. I didn't trust it fully, but it stirred hope. Not for her, but for what redemption could mean. I wouldn't let her near our child, not yet. But I'd learned from my mother, growth starts small, like a seed in cracked soil. This journey taught me something vital. Your worth isn't in others' eyes. It's in the choices you make, the love you give, the boundaries you set. I stood up to Evelyn, not with anger, but with truth, and found strength I didn't know I had. To you watching, know this: you're enough, just as you are. Hold your ground, love fiercely, and let go of what dims your light. Please, if this story touched you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who's faced judgment and kept going. Drop a comment. Tell me your story of standing tall. Subscribe for more tales of heart and courage. Let's lift each other up